All right, well, good afternoon and welcome everyone to the Stinson Center. We see a lot of new faces and some well-known faces here, and it's a great pleasure not only to have you, but to have such a distinguished panel with us today. And we're especially pleased to have Dr. Fun from the new CEO of the Mekong River Commission. And of course, the U.S. side of the Mekong River Commission, the Corps of Engineers, the District of Columbia, and other parts of our establishment are also well represented. And Aaron Salzberg, who I'm going to turn this over to briefly, from the State Department. He's a senior water advisor at State. He's worked for years and years on Mekong issues and other major river systems. We're delighted to have Aaron back again as well. My job is, in a way, is to welcome you, and then try to get out of the way as soon as possible, because we have a large panel and we have about an hour and a half to work with. But I just want to make just a couple comments. One about Stinson. We're non-government, non-profit, and non-partisan, definitely. We depend mainly on foundation support for our work. All of our work, for whoever funds it, is put up on our website, and there's nothing that we produce that goes to anyone in any other way than being posted openly on a website. And for that reason, a recent survey has been done. You probably read about some of them, maybe in the Post or the Times, that Stinson came out we were awarded a score of 5 out of 5 for transparency, and so we're very proud of that. The other thing about Stinson is that we're kind of a moderately sized think tank. Our previous president and CEO used to talk about us as a kind of boutique think tank. I'm not sure that's the word I would use these days, but we do focus. We pride ourselves as much on, or more on, how we do it than exactly what we do. But in terms of the what we do, we've been around for 27 years now, but started as more on a center focused on hardcore security, foreign policy issues. But these days, and I say these days, in the last decade or so, we've moved much more into the area of transboundary issues, as we're going to be discussing today, and also so-called non-traditional security issues, which are also relevant, including human security, food security, water security, all those other things that are important to the security of countries and their people. There's just a couple context things I wanted to mention. First is this is the first time we've ever had a program with the Mississippi River Commission and the Mekong River Commission, and both of which are MRCs. And in addition, the first time we've had the CEO of the Mekong River Commission here, and some other distinguished visitors and participants. So that's very important. The rivers are both some of the world's most important rivers. Everybody knows, I think. So for instance, on annual discharge, and I hope Wikipedia was right on this, but basically the Mississippi River, we're talking about 16,000 plus 16,700 cubic meters annually. And Mekong 14,600. So they're fairly comparable in size in terms of their discharge. The other thing is that they're both muddy rivers. You know, Mississippi River has always been long been called Big Muddy, and we could call the Mekong Big Muddy as well, because they both have high volumes of sediment that they carry from their beginnings to their deltas. And the other thing is that, related to that, both deltas are very under great stress, and partly, of course, climate change and sea level rise, but also, and even more important in the short term, from infrastructure that's been constructed upstream, whether dams, locks and dams, barrages, and other things. And the Mekong is still not as developed as some of the countries would like it to be, the plan for it to be. So there's 6 dams now in China that are operational, large to mega-sized dams, hydropower dams primarily, and 2 dams are now under construction in Laos, one at Sayaburi and one at Don Sahong near the Lao-Cambodia border. And both those dams, the Mekong dams are high dams, big high dams. The Mississippi dams, by and large, are lower dams that are organized, designed more for flood control or river traffic, to support river traffic. Whereas the Mekong, we have not very much river traffic except in northern part in southern China, Yunnan, China, but and in the delta area up to maybe Phnom Penh in Cambodia. But the fisheries are extremely important. So food security is a huge issue with regard to mainstream dams and other kinds of infrastructure. And one irony or one interesting difference, though, is that the transport on the Mississippi River is very much about food security, because about transport of food from out of the grain belt, the breadbasket of the U.S. in the Midwest, and getting it to international ports primarily, as well as national ports. Whereas the Mekong, the food security is much more involved with tens of millions of people still directly dependent on the river for their food security, their livelihoods, and for the economies of the countries. And the river is the second, Mekong is the second most biologically rich river after the Amazon, which is a much bigger river. So enough for that for me. And again, welcome all of you in our panel. And I'm going to turn it over to Aaron Salzberg first, who has actually known all the people on the panel for a long time, and he'll head it off. Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, Rich. Again, my name is Aaron Salzberg. I'm the Special Coordinator for Water at the U.S. Department of State, and it really is my great pleasure to be able to do this panel today, for 2 reasons. One, this is just a critically important issue. I think all of you here came here because you know that already. Sorry, I pushed it away. But the fact that so many lives depend on this river system, and the importance of this river system to supporting economic development, local livelihoods, peace and security of that region is just critically important, and critically important to all of us. And so a great issue. Also because this past week, and Rich alluded to this partnership that exists between the Mekong River Commission and the Mississippi River Commission, we had, with support from the Army Corps of Engineers, the U.S. Department of State, we were able to bring some of the Mekong River Commission folks out to actually see some of the projects and programs that are going on in the Mississippi, so they could experience firsthand what some of our challenges are and how we work to involve local communities in our decision making. And we're really grateful to the Corps of Engineers who helped put that work off. But we were able to capitalize on their being here to bring them here today. And I'll introduce everybody in a minute. And of course, the second reason, and Rich alluded to this as well, which is this is a great panel. Fortunately, I just had lunch with these two, and you're going to be incredibly pleased with the type of conversation you can have with these two gentlemen. I think you'll be, it's remarkable. And second, you've got my mentor over here on the right. You've got one of my former bosses over here on the left, and you've got actually, and I don't think Jerry remembers when we first started engaging each other, maybe 15 years ago. So it's just a real pleasure for me. But what I'll do is I'll introduce the panelists very quickly. I'll turn it over to our 2 colleagues from the region first to give some opening remarks if they'd like to, and then turn it over to our other panelists and then open it up to conversation. But it really is an opportunity for you, and we really hope to have a nice, open, and fun dialogue here. So without further, you have the bios, I think. Am I seeing nods? So, okay, so I won't go through it all. Just very quick, to my left is Dr. Pham. He's the first he's Chief Executive Officer right now of the Mekong River Commission. And he is the first CEO of the MRC that's from the region. And this is something that we've all been advocating for decades, maybe. So it's wonderful to see, and we're very pleased to have him here today. To my right, also Dr. Intave, and he's the Deputy Director General of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment from Laos, but also the representative on the MRC for Laos in some of these discussions. And so I think both of them will have a lot to contribute. To my far right is Jean Stockive, and Jean is a water resources systems engineer, and for over 40 years with the Army Corps of Engineers. Now, I guess, been a river basin planner, engineer, International Joint Commission, work with the U.S. and Canada, and now with Johns Hopkins. And to my near left is Willem Brackle. He's Commissioner of the District of Columbia on the Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin. And Willem is an environmental scientist, a teacher, a career diplomat. I'm very excited to see, as he was leaving the State Department, we talked about doing careers on water. And lo and behold, he's got a next career in water, which is wonderful to see. And Jerry at the far end, Jerry Basin, is the Asia Bureau Director of the Technical Support Office at USAID. He holds the rank of Minister Counselor in the Senior Foreign Service, and as the Director of Technical Services in USAID's Asia Bureau, he's responsible for delivering technical assistance in an entire range of issues, everything from environment, governance, trade, economic growth, education, and health, for USAID in over 21 countries. And so a great set of experience at the table, and I hope you can all take advantage of that. If you don't, I will. So maybe I'll turn it over to you first, if you'd like to make any opening comments.
I'm really, how to say, surprised and kind of ambushed by this. I wasn't prepared for it. And I think I have a colleague here, right? If I'm not mistaken, right? It's I have your support. I'm a first riparian CEO, so and I have been on my job only 7 months. So I hope I can entertain all the questions you have for me. But I'm a little bit nervous if I can answer them all. However, I will try to do my best. So with that, I just want to turn over to other people.
Before I turn it over, maybe I'll just start with a quick question because we'll go
Yes,
to the audience.
please do.
Why did you take this job?
This is the question that many people ask me, and I have difficulty to answer. Actually, I was working in private industry in 2010, and I saw the job announcement, and then I said, well, I was not very happy with my company owner, so I said, well, I'm looking for something else. So it started from that. But then when I got an offer, I said, well, I was working in New York before, I was working in Vienna, Austria before, and also just yesterday I passed by my office 23 years ago on Connecticut Avenue. No, I didn't feel very much that I want to take the job. But however, actually I think it is good for the region, and I am a riparian citizen, so I think that's the main, how to say, driver. That's why I take this job.
If you haven't seen his bio, you should really read through it. And as someone who's also had a very disparate set of career experiences, working on water issues, I've always said, is harder than putting a man on the moon, and I firmly believe that. And as a rocket scientist, I can get away with that. But you should see his background. I think if anybody has the background to tackle some of these challenges that the MRC is facing, I think Dr. Pham is that person. Dr. Intave, did you want to start with any comments?
Just introduce myself. Okay?
That's sure.
Okay. Intavi Akara from the. Actually, I was working with the forestry department before, under the Ministry of Agriculture and Agriculture and Forestry. So that I've been to serve as a Mekong River Commission for 6 years. So I turned back to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, now as acting of the Secretary General of Lao Mekong National Committee. So that in the time that I just new for this position, but Mekong River Commission is not it's not new to me because I was there for 6 years. So that I quite comfortable to share with you on here in any inquiry of our development regarding the Mekong River Commission. Thank you very much for inviting me here. So.
No, thank you. You've been with the MRC now for 6 years?
Yes.
6 years. And from your perspective, the perspective of Lao in particular, what do you see as the strongest benefit that the MRC brings to Lao?
Okay.
Sorry, I'll give you guys time too, but I'm kind of curious.
First of all, I would like to share with you that Mekong River Commission is like what we call as an international organization on behalf of 4 countries working together. Because in each country we have our what we call that National Mekong Committee Secretariat, so that we are working closely with the MRC as he said here. So it's very good that we have some kind of thing that knowledge or what you call that planning of basin development planning is developed by the Mekong River Commission. That will be a good thing that the nation can share and cooperation and working together based on what we have planned in each 5 years. For example, now we have already completed BDP2, right? CEO, if I'm not mistaken. So doing that now, we are implementing of the BDP2 of the planning for each country to implementing on that. So that's the good thing that local community or local each country they can learn from knowledge from them to they are not only support the funding, they also support the capacity building of the local each Mekong River Commission.
Great.
Could I just say?
Please, Rich.
Something I neglected to say in my introduction, which was very important, and that is that the Mekong River Commission involves 4 countries of the lower Mekong, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Thailand, and it was created in 1995 after many years of a previous organization which was mainly run by under international auspices, and in fact at one point under U.S. auspices way back in the Cold War days. This agreement, Mekong Accord of 1995, was the countries coming together and agreeing to cooperate on development and protection of the river and sharing of the water. And over the years, it's struggled to do this because you've got one huge issue, and that is each country is sovereign. There's no veto on what can be built on the river by any other country. Each country has different plans and needs, requirements of the river, aspirations for the river. And in addition, you've got China up in the north, in Yunnan province, and into Tibet, where the river rises, just going its own way. China has built now, I mentioned earlier, six really large to mega-size, some of the world's largest dams in the world that have affected the flow of the river and particularly things like sediment flow. But and Myanmar, Burma, formerly Burma, is also a riparian on the river, and it has several 100 kilometers of stretch of the river, but it's most of the more important rivers in Myanmar flow elsewhere that is tributaries flow to the Bay of Bengal and the Andaman Sea. So the main point I wanted to mention about this is that you have you have at the bottom of the river, the delta, you've got Vietnam, and so Vietnam is affected by everything that happens upstream. Vietnam also has some major dams on tributaries that also affect the delta, and as well as Cambodia. You know, Cambodia has the highest fish consumption in the world, way over almost any other country, and is one of the poorest countries in the world, and is heavily dependent on the river for fish, but it also has aspirations for development, as all the countries do. And so Cambodia is not only building one major dam right now on a tributary river system, but also is considering 2 mainstream dams of itself. But for Cambodia, the problem is that they can't have fish and they can't have electricity at the same time in equal amounts in any event. So there's trade-offs there. Thailand is the biggest economy in the region and the most biggest consumer of electricity, and mainly or largely from other neighboring countries. And then finally, Vietnam. Laos has the largest hydropower potential in the river, except for Myanmar, which on other rivers, but on the Mekong, Laos, south of China, Laos has the highest potential hydroelectric power development. And so, and Laos also is small in population and one of the poorest countries in the region, in the world, and aspires to develop this hydropower potential for mainly for exporting electricity for revenue. So each country then has a different objective and different interests, and it falls to the CEO of the Mekong River Commission in particular, in this case Dr. Fong, to try to lead an organization that has to somehow reconcile all of these differing interests. Now we're going to hear from our American counterparts right now, but the main thing about the U.S. is, yes, Mississippi is a transboundary river as well. I think I'm going in and out on this, aren't I? Sorry. But nonetheless, the states are involved, numerous states, and although they're not sovereign in the sense of their ability to use the river, they are very, very concerned downstream and upstream with what goes on in other countries. And so the Mississippi River Commission has a similar task of trying to reconcile the competing interests of states and communities, whether it's flood control, whether it's transportation, whether it's other water quality issues, etc. So it's a very complicated picture, and I just wanted to make sure the big difference is understood, that we've got 4 sovereign countries in the case of the MRC and no veto power. And in our country, we have a political process, of course, that we use to deal with these issues. So with that, I turn it back over to the panel, but I do think that we'll want to hear more from Dr. Fan inevitably on how he is going to try to manage these competing interests. But thank you so much for me. Sorry for breaking in.
No, it's okay. But now you leave me with a tough choice of whether I allow him to respond now or wait. I'll give you a few minutes to think about the question, and we'll go over to. But the point being, of course, this is an amazingly complicated region hydrologically. While the development interests are somewhat similar, they're also quite different among the different countries and what they need to accomplish. It's a complicated political region, and it's a complicated institutional region with lots of different institutional arrangements at different levels overlapping. So it's a very complicated set of processes. And that's why we have brought some of our U.S. colleagues here to comment on some of the same types of issues that we have in the United States and do a little comparing and contrasting and see where there might be some lessons learned. And Jean, maybe I'll start with you. Both Jean and Willem have an IJC, our Joint Commission with Canada, have a long relationship with that, but now Willem has moved on to some of the more local issues. But Jean, maybe you might comment on some of what you've heard or some of the experiences that we have in the U.S. that might be able to reflect on these issues.
Aaron, You know, when you invited me to this panel, the immediate phrase that came to mind was, "Fools rush in, angels fear to tread." Because as an engineer, I'm trained to solve problems and fix things. And having been in the MRC and supported some of the work of the MRC in the past, obviously it's a very complicated problem. I don't have any solutions for you, and I feel sort of helpless to come up with some magical solution about what you should be doing, other than to say that perhaps you need to change your objectives. You need to change your perspectives on what really needs to be done in the basin. And if you don't mind, I have a little presentation to give.
Great.
Do you don't mind?
Yeah, no, please.
I'm not seeing any objections in the
So,
audience.
and again, this is part of my sort of debilitating defect as an engineer. I need crutches, I need slides.
Should we go down
I'm
in
not
order
a
to see?
diplomat, I can't speak extemporaneously about nothing.
Oh, yeah, that is not true.
So, you know, one of the things that you have to recognize of all of these developing nations is
I
that
think I
when
go
you
down.
have flood damages or drought damages of the magnitude that, and you can see up here, you have Cambodia, Thailand, I don't think this thing works. Anyway, a lot of the nations in the Mekong River Basin are on the high end of flood damages. You can't grow, you can't prosper, you can't have sustainable development unless the first item that you fix is all of these, dealing with the extremes of hydrology and weather and nature. Another graphic is showing the same thing, which I put together, which is look at the Human Development Index, which is the World Bank HDI on the left, and look at water disaster damages as a percent of GDP. Most of the Mekong River nations are on the right-hand side. You can't, again, the first thing you have to do is to try to get your water disaster damages to less than 1% of your GDP per event. So as big as Hurricane Katrina was in the United States, if you look at it in terms of proportion of GDP, it's like 0.02%. That's why we could absorb these damages in the US. It's a big event, $200 billion worth of damages, but in an $18 trillion economy, it's nothing. Well, in most of these other countries, it's 5 to 10% of the GDP. So if you're constantly recovering from flood damages and droughts and everything else, how could you ever grow? That's the first thing you have to deal with in any kind of a water management strategy. Secondly, you have to also recognize that, and I have a feeling, having worked with the World Bank and USAID, I have a feeling that we try to transpose the values of developed nations onto developing nations, when in fact, developing nations have a different set of objectives and priorities that they ought to be pursuing. And the first is poverty reduction, which is connected then to flood damage reduction and all these other aspects. So you can't jump over, you can't leapfrog over basic development, infrastructure for basic economic development, and sort of go into green economy and all these other sort of wonderful phrases as part of sustainable development without dealing with the fundamental issues of poverty reduction. How do you do poverty reduction? What's the solution to poverty reduction? Is it solar panels? Is it windmills? It's economic development. How do you do economic development? That's sort of the crux of the matter. So the pillars of poverty reduction, the first is you have to stimulate economic growth, improve social well-being, strengthen institutional capacities, and so on and so forth. I'm going to run through these pretty quickly. The fundamental debate that we have in our world, meaning the UN system, the World Bank, is the debate between these two economists who have both written books the same year on the fate of India. How do you make India grow? One of them, Amartya Sen, the Nobel laureate, basically follows the Bernie Sanders model. We need more wealth redistribution, everyone has to be equal and fair. Well, where do you get the wealth from? How do you create this wealth? So Bhagwati basically says first you have to grow the economy, then you can use the revenues that you've generated to provide for all of these other services, social services. I mean, this is sort of logical to me, but it doesn't seem to be logical to the UN system. Because the UN system created a whole bunch of sustainable development goals without economic development among them. So they're basically following the SEN strategy. These are the 16 UN SDG goals, where Bhagwati says first you have to deal with poverty reduction through economic development before you could get to all of the other sustainable development goals. Whereas the UN basically says all the sustainable development goals are equal, they're all important, and we should pursue them. How do you pursue them if you don't have the wealth in the economy to pursue those objectives? It just doesn't make any sense. So basically my point is, and I think you could read it, is that the US, UN, all of the 8 strategies are essentially pushing the notion of a green economy as the basis for sustainable development, when in fact it's just going to maintain people on this subsistence level, because you can't skip over basic infrastructure investments to get to this green economy that will grow the overall economy. So you will be constantly, and many of the policies that we have in the United States that we're promoting in the Mekong River Basin are essentially subsistence level strategies. Yes, we want you to continue fishing in the river. We don't want you to grow economically. We don't want you to buy fish in the supermarket. You continue fishing. That's a subsistence economy. That does not get people out of poverty. So you can't leapfrog over traditional investments in infrastructure by shifting over to all of these green economy type solutions. And it's not going to work in the Mekong River Basin. And that's why I say it needs a shift in thinking of objectives. What does the MRC Commission really promote? How does it go about promoting these objectives, et cetera? You know, we got a lot of dams in North America. So you can see down there, the Mekong Basin wants to build extra capacity that doesn't even reach the capacity of Europe. So while you may think that there's a lot of dams in the Mekong River Basin, it's not even close to what we have in North America, which has generated a lot of economic growth and opportunities in the American West, in the Mississippi River Basin, in the Ohio River Basin, in the Missouri Basin, and in the Columbia River Basin. I would even argue that the Columbia River Basin is closer in objectives to what the Mekong River Commission should be following rather than the Mississippi, because it has more of the hydroelectric power dams. So again, you see a picture here of a cattle herder in Kenya holding a cell phone. And that's supposed to be the sort of somehow we can then generate out of this cell phone, we can make people's lives happier and better. Well, the cell phone needs cell phone towers. It needs electricity. Where do you get this stuff? That's the problem. Where do you get all of the basic, fundamental core infrastructure to provide the new technologies to be able to use the new technologies? We're even having trouble with the green economy in our developed countries, especially in California. The latest drought revealed a lot of problems in California. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. What I think I'm going to do, not to take more time, is I'm going to end with this slide, because I have 10 more, and we have a couple other, they're wonderful slides. If you have nothing to say, you have to have nice slides.
This is what academia
I'm going to
does to
say,
you.
look, I recognize, I'm an engineer, I think about these problems differently. And the diplomats think about, maybe I will do one more slide. The diplomats think about these problems differently, because we all have different objectives. But the fundamental objective is what the minister wants, okay? What is it that he wants for his nation and his country? We can provide the information that you need and the diplomats to negotiate. How much flood, what the flood peak will be, how much the reservoirs will rearrange the flood peaks and the drought lows, and all of this other information. How much water there is for allocating to the various countries. We could give you all of that information. We don't do the negotiations, we do the analysis. But what is it that we're working towards? What are the objectives? The objectives are what the minister wants. He wants economic development. He wants some form, he wants to get financing for this economic development from somebody, either internally from taxes or from the World Bank or from USAID. And he wants to ensure water security, the politicians. So the job of the engineer and the job of the diplomat is to make sure that these things happen. But the diplomats work on a completely different set of objectives. And I think a big part of the problem in the MRC is that the diplomats really muddy a lot of the waters, which are already muddy to begin with. Thank you very much.
So normally I'd ask Gene a question, but I don't think you guys came to see the two of us get into it. We do that, and we're happy to do that, but we'll leave that to you to encourage. But look, this is a very important perspective, and to be frank, I think it's one that a lot of the countries are trying to deal with. And how do you make those hard decisions between, basic infrastructure projects that might put local livelihoods at risk, to meet those basic needs and get that economic engine started. We were just talking about some of those very same issues an hour ago. So this is a very important perspective to bring to the table. I was thinking of Willem then Jerry, but I don't know, Jerry, did you have anything? Because you may offer something that directly.
I can respond to some of the points there. When economic growth is happening in Southeast Asia, it's happening big time. And the major push is people are moving to the urban areas. That's where the jobs are. And poverty reduction is happening. Things are improving. There are lots of challenges. But really, to say that development is not happening, it is happening in a big way in Southeast Asia in particular. And the other point I want to mention, you had the mobile phone thing. Again, private sector is the engine that's driving a lot of this. They're out there promoting their private sector, their mobile phone technologies, they're building cell towers, and they are expanding the use of mobile phones for many, many ways. So it's happening now. I'll talk later.
Great. Sure. Willem.
Fine. Thanks very much, Aaron. I very much appreciate this opportunity to talk to you a little bit about the Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin, which I suspect is an organization that's not familiar to very many of you. Just to give you a little bit of the history, and the points of contrast and comparison will emerge hopefully in the quick questions and answers and discussion afterwards. The ICPRB was established in 1940, so we're now in our 76th year of operation. It was established by a compact among 4 states, Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, the District of Columbia, and the federal government. And that compact was ratified by the Congress, an act of Congress in 1940. It was motivated by the disgraceful status of the Potomac River in the 1930s and 40s, which was notoriously polluted at the time due to both sewage pollution as well as industrial pollution. So the aim of the ICPRB was to protect, enhance, and conserve the waters and associated land resources of the Potomac River Basin and its tributaries, and through primarily interstate and regional cooperation. It's funded by dues from the 6 signatories of the compact, although sometimes the funding doesn't always come through. We also get grants from large agencies such as EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, to carry out certain activities. We have a budget of about $3 million a year, a little bit less than that. There are 3 commissioners per jurisdiction. I'm one of the DC commissioners on this commission. And we have a professional staff of about 20. Our powers are very limited. We have no regulatory authority. We can't tell anybody to do anything. But nevertheless, despite that, as a voluntary, sort of consensual organization, we still have managed to help the jurisdictions in the Potomac River Basin really address some of the key issues. We, for instance, are primarily interested in collecting, analyzing, and distributing scientific information about the basin. We also promote uniform laws and regulations among the various basin partners. We disseminate information and recommendations to the public, and we also have the right, if asked or even if not asked, we can in fact opine, issue opinions and comments on major public and private projects that might affect the water quality and water quantity in the basin. There are 4 major emphasis areas in our work. One is water supply. 100% of the tap water that we drink in Washington, D.C. comes from the Potomac River, so that's an extremely important part of our activities. We also are interested in water quality, as well as aquatic life, and also communication, outreach, and education of the public and of stakeholders. The serious industrial and sewage pollution issues of the 1930s and 40s and 50s are thankfully behind us, thanks to the Clean Water Act, Drinking Water Protection Act, and so on, other legislation at the federal level, as well as the work of the various states in the region. But we still have problems. Primarily sewage is still a problem for us because of our combined sewage system, where our storm sewers and our sanitary sewers are interconnected. So whenever we have a major rainstorm in Washington, you actually get overflows of untreated water into the Potomac River. That said, that is something that's being addressed through infrastructure investments and so on. The major issues for us now in the river are the increased population and an increased demand for water, both for drinking water as well as water for cooling and power plants and for industry. For agriculture, we have issues with nutrients and sediment, which are finding their way into the river. Land use changes and the increase of impervious surfaces, making for a more erratic distribution of water over time. We have emerging contaminants, we have alien invasive species, and we have agricultural practices that sometimes can be harmful. We also are not far from the Marcellus Shale area, where the potential for fracking at least is there, although there's not much currently happening in this basin. There is a history of coal mining in the western part of the area here. So I think I'm going to really cut short what I was going to say and just mention that I can talk more if there are questions about what we do to assure a secure water supply for the District of Columbia and the Washington metropolitan area. I can talk a bit about what we do with emergency spill response. I can talk more about what we do to our part that we do in protecting the Chesapeake Bay and trying to ensure that the levels of pollutants finding their way into the Chesapeake Bay are minimized. And we've also had some good successes with the restoration of a migratory fish, the river herring, that might be of interest to you. I think I'll leave it at that and then it's open up to questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Willem. Jerry.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. So economic growth is happening in Southeast Asia and the lower Mekong area in a big way, driven by the private sector. And the real challenge is how can we help influence and guide this investment? Well-planned, well-constructed, you need to have appropriate planning and design. Without that, you're likely to have negative impacts, significant negative impacts. One of the areas I want to focus on is looking at social and environmental safeguards. And this is an area that USAID is investing in. It's something that US has a lot of experience in. So USAID's development approach is, we look at advocating an integrated resource planning approach where food production, river transportation, fisheries, water supply, and electricity generation, including hydro, solar, and wind, are all maximized. I want to highlight 5 areas that USAID is engaged in the lower Mekong. First, we are involved in supporting informed decision making. We want to help the decision makers look at sound science and then how do you anticipate social and environmental costs and benefits of development projects. One example is that we've been building the capacity of local organizations to actually do modeling of projects for dams where you look at the sediment flow and the fish migration and fish movement. So building low capacity to look at these kinds of science-based issues and then inform decision making based on the evidence that you've been able to develop. Second, we support the increased coordination among national governments. We support a number of regional bodies that are concerned with infrastructure and regional environmental impact assessments. And in particular, USAID is involved in a regional technical working group on environmental impact assessments. And this has participations from all 5 countries of the lower Mekong. And it's starting to have some impact on overall guidance in the region, but in particular, several countries are looking at how do they improve their national level environmental impact assessment procedures, particularly Cambodia and Burma. The third area is improving awareness, access, and use of reliable information, and in particular, geospatial data on the anticipated social and environmental costs and benefits of infrastructure investments, and again, by all stakeholders. In this regard, we're supporting a long-term regional capacity on geospatial analysis, and we also support how do we increase civil society engagement. And the fourth area is we are delivering on-demand technical support to Lower Mekong governments to help them mitigate potential negative and social impacts of their programs. And the last part I want to highlight is energy. And clearly, Gene and I are going to have a discussion this later. But we believe very strongly in promoting the use of clean, renewable energy in the power grid system and expanding energy efficiency. This will help reduce the demand for new electricity. We support integrating renewable energy into the power planning process, using competitive procurements and smart incentives for renewable energy, and then mobilizing finance. We're demonstrating that solar power and other renewable energies are attractive to the private sector, and the cost of renewables can be very competitive with fossil fuels. And the renewable power plants can be built on a much faster time frame than conventional power plants with minimal negative social and environmental impacts. Again, I'd like to thank Simpsons for hosting this center, Simpson Center for hosting this event, and we look forward to a constructive discussion that it can inform and guide USAID's development investments. Thank you.
No, thank you, Jerry. That's very helpful. Maybe I want to turn back to our two colleagues from the region first, just to see if you had any other comments or questions or reflections on what you heard from our other panelists, or anything you wanted to follow up on, and then I'll turn it over to see if there are any questions. If not, then I'm going to ask questions.
No, I don't.
No?
have it.
Good. Do you have any? No, thanks. Good. Any questions from out here? Let's start over here on the left. If you can just tell us who you are before you ask, that'd be great.
Sure. My name is Dia Milani. I work for Commodics International, and I currently work on the Surveyor project.
Oh.
Thank you very much. And which is funded by USAID. And I'm the grants manager on that project, and working on some grants right now to support our Surveyor Mekong initiative. And I would like to ask about the relationship between USAID and the Mekong River Commission. Just generally what that relationship looks like and what interactions there are, if any.
Well, they're a regional organization. We collaborate with them. We don't have a working relationship in a sense of an agreement per se, but we collaborate and support them in many ways. We had to support them on the modeling study for the sediment flow and the fish study, the fish movement. That was with the Mekong River Commission. But,
Yeah, and correct me if
please add to
I'm
that.
wrong, and I'll look at a couple of folks on this, but you know, the United States is actively involved as part of the donors group to the Mekong River Commission, and working with the other donors to both provide some sort of strategic advice and on occasion targeted financial support. So I think there are activities within the MRC where the United States has provided support through USAID, but also through the Department of State. Is that fair, Julian? Okay. Please, same thing. If well, I don't know. Did you want to comment on the relationship between?
I think you may know better than me in this. Actually, I would like just correct some information about Dr. Itavia. He has been working with the MRC, with the Mekong River Commission 6 years, but in the past, so he has not been working with the Mekong River Commission lately. But now he's the acting Secretary General of the Mekong River National Mekong River Committee of Laos. So he's not developing his career within the Mekong River Commission. Just now, answering this, I paid 2 visits in the USAID office in Bangkok, met Alfred, and we would like to very much to further develop relationship with the USAID. So I do not. I think in the past we have a lot of support from USAID, a lot of work together, but I cannot give you the details.
Well, make sure you get her card, because I know one of the things we're certainly trying to do with the severe network node that we're setting up out there is to help build the capacity of the individual countries to make better use of remote sensing data, but also the MRC, and finding a way of tying all that together to help support integrated planning decisions. So this is an important initiative for us. So I thought I saw another right there. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much for your the discussion. My name is David Bernard. I'm with PACT. We're actually implementing two of the programs. Mr. Basin had mentioned the Mekong Partnership for the Environment and the Sustainable Infrastructure Partnership. But actually, a question I had was actually to the gentleman in Laos and then Vietnam regarding the Lao Cang Mekong Cooperation mechanism, the LMC, which I understand is essentially China joining hands with the Lower Mekong countries to create another initiative, another body that perhaps might supersede MRC, perhaps would, this is the question, where do you see the LMC versus the MRC, and how can they work together, and how can they make sure to leverage China's involvement in the region?
Okay. I am from Vietnam, but I'm not. I do not represent Vietnam in MRC. I am a CEO, and I am a neutral professional CEO. I'm not, how to say, funded by Vietnam in order to represent Vietnam at the Mekong River Commission. So just make sure that's. Talking about this Lanka Mekong cooperation, when they have this summit meeting in China in Sanya, right, in March 2016, I made a press an announcement as a press release. After that, we supported the Mekong River Commission. We supported. Now to say that, but you need to know that the Lanka Mekong Corporation has a wide area of cooperation. Water resource, water management or water resources is only one of the 5 areas that they cover. So that's one thing. So to answer that, and we would like very much, because we are regional organization of only 4 countries, which includes Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia. We have China and Burma and Myanmar are the only dialogue partners. So in that sense, we would say that we would like to participate in the work of Lanka Mekong Corporation. Actually, we volunteer to take care of all the water issues of Lanka Mekong Corporation, and also we would like to take it's maybe too close to take care of all the water resources, water issues of the Lanka Mekong Corporation, if possible. However, still located in Laos or in Cambodia, not to move to China. So just and we express that to China. We would like to do that. Now, does it supersede FRC or not, Mekong River Commission or not? There is concern of many development partners, but I don't see that it would supersede, because it has larger areas of interest, so of the activities. The second thing is this: Mekong River Commission is the only organization which is treaty-based. Lanka Mekong Corporation is just, how to say, it's not a treaty-based one. So I would say that. And we have been, by the way, in the business for the last 21 years. If you compare the 1995 Mekong Agreement with the so-called 1997 United Nations Watercourses Convention, then I would say that we have longer history of time for the operation for the operation of the agreement or implementation of agreement in the region. The UN Convention is entered into force only 1 year ago. just at the end of 2014. And even if we take that in the Mekong region, right, we have only Vietnam ratified the convention, but other countries did not ratify. Even China voted against it in 1997. So it says that the Mekong River Commission is very, very relevant. And by the way, if you look back at 1995, when the agreement was signed, it was the most progressive agreement at the time, and it entered into force right away in 1995. Moreover, if you look at the history of the Mekong River Commissions for the last 21 years, it is a legendary one. Take this UN convention, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. However, if Vietnam is only the country ratified, but other upstream countries do not ratify it, it is not effective at all. So in that way, I think I answered the question that it is relevant, and the Lancang Mekong Corporation will not supersede the Mekong River Commission.
Yeah, I was going to ask a follow-up, but maybe I'll go to the other questions we can come back to, because I want to make sure you have time. Sorry, where'd the microphone go? Let's work that way, because the microphone's closest to you, and then we'll get it this way.
Thank you, Eric. I'll stand. Anyway, my name is Henry Mangera, formerly consultant for the Mekong River Commission. I think this is more of a reflection and perhaps an unrelated question. Eugene, if you don't mind, can you show your last slide?
Uh-oh.
Somebody.
There you go. You know, I'm also an engineer, by the way. So. But anyway, so I don't think you were saying that there is a conflict here. In fact, I think what you're saying is that the diplomat and the engineer has to work together to actually achieve the requirements or the objectives that are prescribed by the minister. And what I would like to say is that really what MRC is. They're both the engineers and they're both the diplomats. Because in hydro diplomacy, as you said, the overlapping perspective of hydro diplomacy, there are really two objectives of hydro diplomacy. The first one is a very technical objective, which is on sustainable development. In fact, if you look at the logo of MRC, it says optimal basin development, perhaps, but there's a lot of debates on the real definition of that. And so that's the first objective of MRC, to be able to come up with a sustainable development and management of the river basin. It's primarily technical, obviously, there's the political and management aspects of it. But the second was the subjective of hydro diplomacy, really, that is not really being discussed up front, but we all know, is that MRC, as a hydro diplomat, basically serve as the mechanism for discussions, communication among the countries to continue, just to keep the peace. I'm not saying that without MRC, peace will not be there. But I think it's important to know that MRC is kind of successful in that respect as well. So, unrelated question, I suppose. I think Richard mentioned that both rivers, the Mississippi River and the Mekong River, are both muddy rivers. I think, yes, I recognize that, but I think in the Mekong River Commission, in the Mekong River, sediment is more like treated as one of the lifelines in that region. While, correct me if I'm wrong, in Mississippi River, I think sediment is more like looked at more negatively. Thank you. And maybe you guys can comment on that.
Getting better at that and looking at the delta issues. Yeah. Thank you, Henry. Do you want to pass the microphone this way? Does anybody have a particular response? No? Okay.
Can I say something?
Yeah, please, Jim.
The other slides that I didn't show were related to this one. And the point that I wanted to make with that is that water management is more like three-dimensional chess. So you have the flat plane where the engineers and the ministers of water resources irrigation are working on their problem. There are another set of planes above that. And the solution to the Mekong River problems lie not in the water resources sector, but they lie in the diplomatic triangle, because they could get at other issues of benefit sharing, trade agreements, water quality agreements, transboundary. All of these things can be used to leverage the things that you want to achieve in water resources management. So that's beyond our realm, right? That's beyond the engineer's realm. It's in the diplomat's realm. I'm not sure that they are functioning at that multi-dimensional level, as they should.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right, and it is a challenge even for, because we're all stovepiped, and these are very intersectoral types of challenges, and how do you reach the right level of management that can make decisions across those different sectors and different aspects of trade and everything else? Very, very challenging. It's a big challenge that I think our new CEO will face. We talked a little bit about this earlier, but how do you bring technical information to the relevant policymakers, or how do you empower the policymakers who are part of your conversations to be able to make the kinds of decisions that they will have to make? That's going to be a real challenge.
Hi, I'm Jane Summers. I'm the Senior Energy Advisor in the USAID Asia Bureau in Jerry's office. And I had a comment and then a question. So my comment is on Eugene's presentation. Thanks for the graphics. As an engineer, I like the visuals. I guess the one comment I would make is I don't agree with you that it's an either or of economic development or so-called green economy. I think that if we don't develop it in an environmentally sustainable way, our economic growth, then it's much more difficult and expensive to later try to introduce green or environmentally friendly, even energy efficiency measures into these projects after they're already constructed and built. So I would just say I think they should be done together, and in fact you could have more economic growth if you do it in a sustainable way. My question for you, Dr. Pan, is for MRC, what do you think are your greatest needs that agencies like USAID or other donors could assist you to strengthen your authority or your capacity or organization to be as effective as possible in the region, and ways we can assist you in achieving your goals to do that?
I would say I do not know very much also about USAID, so I don't know what I can ask you because I don't know a lot. So that's one thing. But however, all what I know, I think that technically you can help us a lot as also U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in the technical areas. Even though that's actually I approached Alfred in Bangkok 2 times. Right now we would like very much to complete so-called a council study, which would assess all the impacts of the hydropowers of the mainstream and others, also other impacts, in order to have it as a inputs for the decision making in 4 countries. So all that, I mean, the technical expertise from you, I think that's very important, and also all the experience that you have done in other regions would be also helpful. I think that we also look at the geospatial that you have. You have workshops in our Cambodia office. We think that's great. However, it costs a lot of money, by the way. So I think it's also, we might have also a problem to implement those high technology in the region. So, but that's not the only thing. I think also the soft skills or soft areas, like I learned from USA's, that you have a center of conflict resolution. You talk about stakeholder engagement. Those things are very, very helpful for us. One of the things I think that I learned for the last week, during this trip, that we witness, we listen to public hearings in the Mississippi River Commission, which amazingly that they have done that for the last 150 years, or since 1878. and it's the number is 396 sessions of these water inspections. And one session, the last sessions that they did, they have 7 public hearings from the top of the river to the downstream. And we hear that those are the amazing thing is that we do not do that in Mekong River Commission. We never do that. So this is an eye-opening experience, and I mean that's that. So just to give you that you have done a lot in your history, in your experience, we would like to tap into those experience and expertise.
Yeah, these software skills, very interesting. I don't know, Dr. Inti, did you want to?
Aaron, if I could perhaps
Please
add a
will.
little bit about the Potomac River, we've also undergone a substantial evolution since 1940. And I think some of that experience that we've had may be instructive to others as well. Back in the day, as many of you know, many water resource issues were basically considered engineering problems. You know, build a dam, dig a ditch, or whatever, build a levee. And we have, over the years, come away from that, obviously, and we are very much now in a time, in a world of integrated water resource management, where we try to bring together all the various aspects of the environment and deal with them in an integrated fashion. And that means including, for instance, natural infrastructure, the role of forests and wetlands in regulating water flow or cleaning water and so on. And we at the ICPRB, the Interstate Commission on the Potomac River Basin, have recently recast our strategic plan to sort of reflect that more explicitly. And I encourage you, if you have a chance, to go to our website, potomacriver.org, and look at that. Likewise, we are now in the process of starting stakeholder consultations in order to develop a basin-wide water resources plan for the entire basin, involving all stakeholders, as I said, and that'll be a 2-year process. And so it's by bringing people together, not just focusing on the engineering, but those things are obviously important, but really trying to integrate all that to find the best solutions. I just want to add that to
Well, thanks, Willem. Thank you. Yes.
Aaron, I've got,
Sorry.
can I just also raise an issue again? And a bit of a follow-up to Jane Summers' question she raised, but also I wanted to say to Eugene, you get the prize for probably the most provocative statement ever made about hydropower on any of the panels that we at the STEM Center have organized on this subject, and that's not meant as a unintended
Support or unsupport.
yeah. Okay, but I think one point that you made is, I think, relevant to what Jerry was talking about, because when I heard all the things that USAID is doing, I didn't hear any priorities either. I didn't hear any kind of strategic approach, and I'm not want to make a big point about that, but rather use both these comments to raise another issue that Aaron would be very familiar with, but also to call on both of our regional representatives here, and that is that there's been, these days the debate is not so polarized maybe as it was in the past, partly because of the reality that some of these dams are being built. But in fact, there are rising questions about even the feasibility, financial feasibility, and the political feasibility of the projects and political risk, and also things like the Mekong in recent years hasn't got the amount of water in it that was assumed was going to be there for the future in terms of flows, particularly during the dry season, and even China's dams haven't regulated the river in a way that's avoided drought and serious problems that hamper the operation of hydro dams. But there has been a lot of discussion now in recent years about what we call so-called the nexus, that is the trade-offs between water, energy, food security, other other values of water. And I wondered if particularly the three of you in the center of the panel would like to comment on where this stands with the Nexus, and even with USAID as well. That where does the Nexus stand in terms of either the MRC or the Friends of Lower Mekong or the U.S. Lower Mekong Initiative? There's a lot of talk about these trade-offs, but there's no mechanism so far to actually get them, put them into play. So, anyone? Nexus, trade-offs.
Well, maybe just to give my colleagues a few seconds to think, because I usually talk and not think. We do have priorities, and I think when you look at where USAID and the State Department have been focusing a lot of attention around building capacity to improve the sustainability of infrastructure investments, to improve integrated planning and information for integrated planning and development decision making. But remember, a lot of our investments are done on a bilateral basis and not necessarily regional. And so, we still have to do justice to all the bilateral programming that's addressing some of the basic needs, which go from access to drinking water and sanitation to improving agriculture and all sorts of other development outcomes that we're focused on in the individual countries. The Nexus, part of my role within the Mekong is I chaired the Environment and Water Working Group of the Lower Mekong Initiative. And have been talking quite a bit about the Nexus and the Nexus issues. I know that, what does the Nexus actually mean? And I know that's a tough issue to address. And I think the way we've tried to view it is it's really about identifying new opportunities for economic growth because of the synergies between water, food, and energy. What's the money that we're leaving on the table by not looking holistically at these three issues collectively when we're talking about development? And the other side of that coin is the risks, and understanding the risks, the new risks that are emerging because of the interconnections between water, food, and energy, and are we doing enough to address those kinds of issues? And this has become a major theme of our discussions within the LMI. We actually, at the State Department, working very closely with our USAID colleagues, have put out a request for proposals to look at Nexus programs within the Mekong region, and our hope is to begin some programming that addresses some of those challenges in the coming months. So I know it's an area that we're trying to advance quite a bit with our colleagues in the region. But Jerry, did I do that justice?
That's correct.
Okay.
The only thing I would add on is, you mentioned, we have specific strategies for a given country, and that looks at the development challenges in that country, but also what the government's capability is, civil society capability, private sector, and other donors. So it will be a broad perspective on what is the role of the U.S. government in that particular country. For example, you're talking about the Nexus, we're focusing much more on food security, and you're looking at the issue of link between food and nutrition. So Gene, your point about the development, one of the biggest challenges we see on the social well-being is malnutrition. And many countries in Southeast Asia have very high stunting rates. And so something, the development world, we oftentimes get stovepiped. But it's very important to think about what's required for development in these countries. And oftentimes it's good nutrition for the first 2 years of a child's life, and then it's good education. And then you've got to have the private sector engaged for creating jobs. You have to have clean water. There are a lot of things that have to be done. So I would just say that there is a kind of a prioritization, but it's within a broader context.
But maybe let me twist your question a little bit and repropose it to Dr. Pham, because we know a lot of the water challenges that the MRC will be looking at is going to be driven by the energy sector. And the energy conversations are happening in GMS, they're happening in other fora. How is it, what steps are you thinking about, or are you not there yet, about how we bring some of those other communities into some of these discussions within the MRC, or bring some of the MRC concerns into those other areas, that there's a greater interconnectivity between the decision-making processes around energy, around food, and what the MRC is looking to do on water?
Well, this is very difficult for me to answer. However, we have a 5-year strategic plan, which covers all these hydropower. It covers also the fishery, which is the food security in. We talk about that food securities in Cambodia, and the water, actually how we ensure the water quality and how we facilitate the, my colleague just talked about the sediments, which is I think that Henry just said about sediments when in Mississippi is treated or considered differently as in Mekong River. In the Mekong River, sediment is very vital, which helps the Vietnamese rice bowl in the Mekong Delta. So in fact, we even with the suggestion from Nature in Heritage Institute, that we even suggest to China to do the sediment flushing of their dams in order to release the 50% of the sediment which was trapped in the cascades of dam in China. So I would say yes, it's covered there in our strategic plan. So in any way, I mean that's we are working on all these issues together in order to. I think it's not really how to express clearly in our strategic plan this nexus. However, all these three components of that are embedded in our strategic plan.
Dr. Inteve, anything you want to add? No?
I think it's. No, it's just would like to add in that. But first, I would like to share an information about the Mekong River watershed. From the border of the Laos, go up to the Tibet of China. They call as Lansang River. They are not called as a Mekong River. So that from Laos, border between and China, go to the delta of Vietnam, we call Mekong River. So that sometimes some people may heard CEO say that Lansang is the name of the Mekong River upper part only. So that's why in the Mekong River Commission, we have 4 countries in the member, and then we have 2 dialogues partner, China and Burma. So that is the thing that I would like to share. And regarding the on the information related to the watershed or basin plan, so that we also, if compared to Mississippi, Mississippi is in advance for us to know to develop the basin. So you're looking at on sedimentation, water quality, water use, and then also we are looking with the flood management, everything. And also we also looking on it, but it's less information or less experience to do that. That's why we have an MOU with the MIRC and MRC. So we come here to share and to learn from MIRC how is the management of or manage our basin development and in a watershed manner. So that I just like to add in on it. Thanks.
Please. Microphone.
Hello. My name is Sawalak. I'm a graduate student focusing on energy and environment. So I have a quick and simple question. So you mentioned that in Laos there's plans that complemented based on the agreement from Mekong River Commission. So is there any plans in the rest 3 countries that has been successfully implemented in like in a concrete way? Is there any plan or any construction that have been complemented based on the argument?
Sorry, meaning are there construction plans that one country has brought to the MRC that have been actually carried out that the MRC has?
That's based on the MRC argument.
Procedures and protocols within the MRC. So
right.
have there been specific dams or other activities that have been proposed by some of the countries that have worked through the PNPCA procedures successfully. And
Do you want to answer? Okay, let me answer. I think that's, if I understand your question correctly, that you want to see any output from the MRC at all, right? I would say that we have this, I talk about the strategic plan 2016-2020. It is the second 5-year strategic plan. We had the first 5-year strategic plan, which is for 2011-2015. Our how to say assessment is that strategic plan was largely completed. So I would say that if in how to say in summary, you have the whole strategic plan for the 5 years, and if I'm not mistaken, the budget for that for the last 5 years about $100 million, $120 million, I think $120 million. Now, I mean, in the broader terms, that you have a strategic plan which was largely completed, so accomplished. That could be a big accomplishment. It was not under my watch, right? So I just want. But for the last 21 years of Mekong River Commission, you should see this that we have 5 procedures which are famous, very good. Those are 5 procedures actually in the place and are used, which is the first one is for water quality. Then the next one would be the water flow of the river, right? And the next one is water utilization. Then the fourth one is data exchange. Actually, data exchange is also very, very important one. And moreover, we have also the, how to say, provision of the data from China. It has been increased from 2002 up to now. Even now, they provide more information, more data to us, to MRC, to Mekong River Commission. Actually, my previous CEO even shared with me that China shared the data with the Mekong River Commission more than with any other country, so with more than any other, let's say, institution. So that is, I would say, but the last one I would say, Aaron already mentioned PNPCA, which stands for the procedures for notifications, prior consultation and agreements, which has been applied twice to the Saibai and Dongsuhong, and even the, how to say, law professors say that these 2 applications are unique. No country, no anywhere in the world which was accomplished. Even though that those are procedures which have been they identify design changes, or they require design changes for Saibai, and that's why it's to reduce negative impacts of the dam to the environment. So I think that those are big, how to say, accomplishment. I think that you work with the MRC. I think that you may agree with me with that or not. So to answer your simple question, but I think a lot of things to say.
It's all yours, Gene.
I have a question. So you think I ran out of provocative things to say, right?
No way.
What would it, and this is to the diplomats here, have there been discussions in the background that we're not aware of? What would it take to get the Zaire Dam to be left uncompleted? What incentives can you provide to build other dams upstream that would equal the capacity, more or less, the hydroelectric power capacity and the flood control capacity of the Zaire Dam? What would it take to get, what is it, Cambodia that's building it? Laos. What would it take for Laos to say, okay, we will not build a dam, but we want something more and bigger? What's on the table?
Are you asking me or
No, I'm
Aaron?
asking the diplomat, Aaron.
I'm supposed to be the moderator.
Because this is the way I
You are
would-
giving him hard time.
This is the way I would run negotiations, you know. It's okay, so what do you want? What is it going to take? Actually, Donald Trump would be good at this. What would it take for you to forego the dam, and we'll build you other dams that would be equivalent? And it seems to me that is the logical thing to do, rather than.
Okay.
In other words,
Can
you
I
plan-
answer that
you plan-
question?
Oh, please go
Wait a
ahead.
minute. Here's the thing. The MRC and the State Department and all of the whole diplomatic community, basically, if you understand optimization, you plan by constraints, where I would rather that you plan by what are your objectives, okay? Realign your objectives, reconfigure the whole table, the chessboard, okay? And then start all over again, instead of being stuck in the same rut that you've been stuck in the last 20 years.
Yeah, no question. Look, you're exactly right, and we do go back and we ask these questions, and when we look at, and I don't want to pick on Laos, when we look at any country in this kind of a situation, there's no question they need energy security. Look, they're trying to meet the basic needs of their people. They need energy to meet the basic needs of their people. They need water to meet the basic needs of their people. They need food to be able to meet the basic needs of their people. And in some cases, they do that through both mechanisms that you talked. One, about providing those services, but also generating foreign revenue, which can generate income that allows them to invest in those basic services directly. And I think that's the situation you find a country like Laos in. They need to both provide those services for their people, and they need to generate revenue, and hydropower is a way of generating revenue. This is a really complicated set of challenges, though, when you talk about what our capacity is to influence this. And please, gentlemen, step in and correct me if I don't have this right.
Okay, I think this, first of all, is Laos, it's not Cambodia, right?
Laos.
So, and this, I have the honor to visit the site. So I would say I find it's a beautiful advanced dam, but I would say that Laos has an objective that to develop economy. I mean, to have a good economic development, actually to increase their GDP, their income revenue. So if you have in your house that if you have these 9 dams that could be built, and you could have a lot of income right away, why don't you do that in order to reduce the poverty of your country? So if you look at it now, you say, what would be the incentive for Laos not to build a dam in order to? It's very simple. Give them money. Are you able to give them money in order for them to be free from the least developed countries? Simple, right? And also there was a talk, actually, your island actually, when we met in Cần Thơ in Vietnam, there was a workshop in this water use of Mekong River water in a sustainable way. Mm-hmm. And he said, would Vietnam be, willing to pay Laos a certain amount of money for Laos not to build a dam? Simple, right? Another thing that I would say, well, you can come in and build a nuclear power plant for them, and then they would have this nuclear power plant, and then maybe they will have another kind of a protest, the green protest that do not build a nuclear power plant. Follow Japan, follow Germany, forget the nuclear power plant, the same game again. Right now, but I look at this nuclear power, look at the hydropower in Siberia. You know what? Laos would, it will go into operation in 2019. In 2019, and do you know what? Laos would use only 5% of that 1,200 megawatts hydropower plant. 95% would be sold to Thailand. Thailand would buy 95%. And Thailand is one of the investor. I mean, the biggest investor, right? So in that, but however, I would say that I would like to share this. I think I learned this from your American fellow. Laos has an excellent degree on the nuclear, on the green energy. Actually, and it's I think it's they advocate use or purchase or sell of the energy which should be green. That is very good. I think it's very progressive, very advanced in the region. And by saying that, I think that Thailand should buy only green energy from Laos, and Laos should build only green, green dams. So just I think I can answer some of your questions.
Oh, it's okay. I say thank you to him to support this information.
No.
It's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah, sorry. All right, another question before Gene thinks of something else.
Thank you. I think I completely changed my question after that conversation. So, I'm Jamie Term. I'm from the U.S. Department of Energy, Office of International Affairs. I cover Southeast Asia, including Laos. My question is for everyone on the panel, though. In your respective positions and with your organizations, in what way are you incorporating climate change and the anticipated change in long-term rainfall, either increase or decrease seasonal changes, into your into the planning and development of your systems and into the long-term portfolios?
I could do it first.
I was going to, that's
Sure.
for,
We're doing it in several ways. There's a requirement, I think with executive order, all international U.S. government activities must look at climate change impacts as part of their design. So we do it at the country level strategy. And at a second point, when we design a given project, a specific project, there is going to be a mandatory analysis, just like we'll have for gender issues. There's going to be a climate change analysis. It looks at a given project. It could be a health project. It could be an agriculture project. They'll be looking at climate change impacts, and then how do we address it and mitigate it.
How are you looking at those impacts?
Well, for example, you're saying that in health systems, we're looking at more impacts in the health where there's going to be more demand for health systems, okay, because of the impact of climate change. In agriculture, you're saying, well, what are we going to be doing about the drought, long periods? Well, you're going to have drought-resistant seeds. You're going to have drip irrigation. You're going to possibly change your cropping. So each particular project has to look at it and say, what is it you're trying to accomplish? What kind of impacts are you expecting? It could be floods. It could be droughts. So each example will have to look at, give a country-specific example. But it's a required mandatory analysis. I'd like to think that USAID will be learning as we do this. We don't necessarily have all the answers. We have to be learning and adapting and then be transparent about what worked and didn't work. And we do our evaluations now. We are putting all the evaluations online. You know, here's what USAID did. Some worked, some didn't work. And then be transparent about it.
Willem, how are you guys looking at climate impacts and opining on those types of issues?
Well, climate is extremely important to us. A lot of our work at the Potomac River Basin Commission has to do with longer-term forecasting of demand and supply of water, for instance, for the Washington, D.C. area. So we're very much aware of the modeling that's taken place in terms of predicted variability in precipitation. It seems that the basin as a whole is sort of in an intermediate area. Some areas will get more water, some will get less. So that overall, the amount of water may be roughly the same for the next several decades. But there is concern about the intermittency and the variability in that supply. And so we have, for instance, just issued last year a report looking at the water supply for the area over the next 25 years. We are relatively confident that we can survive most kinds of incidents of drought, for instance, that have occurred in the past. But as we get further along in the future, we do get concerned about what the possibilities are. So we're definitely sort of factoring that into all of our activities, and it's an issue for us.
Gene, put your engineer hat on, not your philosopher
Had a
hat
slide
on.
here, so-
But the IJC, you actually did some of the studies on the Great Lakes. I mean, can we actually look at some of these long-term climate
Yeah,
impacts?
we did.
and assess? Can we assess them with some sort of?
No.
There we go.
We assessed it. So here's from the Mekong River Basin report. So here are 6 scenarios that the Mekong River Commission used. And you can see, as an engineer, how do I design, what are the engineering design standards for a system that varies plus 40% to minus 40%? We found the same thing in the Great Lakes, except that we used 23 GCMs and 650 scenarios. So the cloud of dots encompass plus or minus 10 degrees Celsius, plus or minus 100% variability in lake levels. So how do you get out of that morass? It's almost impossible unless you use engineering judgment, which is what I'm here for. Right? There is no way really to plan for this, on top of which, and I didn't bring this slide here because I didn't want to bore you. There's a 10,000-year record of monsoons in Vietnam, in caves. They have stalactites, stalagmites. So you can see over the last 10,000 years, the monsoon intensity has decreased significantly since 10,000 years ago, to a point where the Khmer civilization disappeared because they had 40-year droughts, no monsoons. Now it's rebounding. And if it rebounds, 10,000 years ago, temperature was 2 degrees Celsius higher. So from that, from the evidence, other paleologic evidence, one could deduce that you better be planning for more frequent floods, more intense monsoons, a lot more flooding in the future than there has been in the recent past.
Good question. Tough answer. Any thoughts?
Well, I think right now Vietnamese are concerned that they are getting less water and less. So if monsoon is more, and it would be very wonderful for the Vietnamese. I would say
Monsoons and typhoons. Remember, you're getting hit from both sides.
To answer your questions, right? What we do, I think that's. That in Mekong River Commissions we have, if I'm not mistaken, about 5 transboundary projects, which are model projects in order to find adaptive measures against that climate change. So with those, projects, if the projects seem to be, successful, identify good measures, that would be multiply or copy to other regions. So that's going on right now. We have, in fact, before this new reform in the Mekong River Commissions, before the July, we have a big program actually funded by European Union with the name the Climate Change Adaptation Initiative. So right now that's a program. It has been even extended for the next 12 months. However, because of this reduction to become leaner organization for the MRC, we reduce a lot of staff. A year ago we have about 200 people. Now we have only 66 positions. So that also it would affect a little bit the program. We don't have enough people to work on it, but that's what we have to do.
Well, actually, let's ask that question directly. As the moderator, all right, you just came and told us, look, 650 different models. How much did all this cost?
Oh, it cost, because we have plenty of money.
Right.
That's one
So actually, how much did it cost?
We spent about $2 million just on the climate change impact analysis.
Okay, so just looking at the climate change impact analysis, not even addressing the
And
problem.
it didn't really.
Just doing the analysis.
Didn't really
Are we
get
going
us
to be,
anywhere.
look, they got real needs. Are we taking money away from delivering services on the ground to invest in analyses and research that really might not get us much further down a sound development pathway. In other words, I've got a person who's making a decision about, look, I need all the resources I can to provide these basic needs for the people I've got here. This climate analysis sounds like spending a lot of money on things that aren't going to get me answers.
Cloud of dots.
I mean, is this an existential issue or a real practical issue that we're going to be working with in terms of balancing our investments and where we put our money in the future?
I think for USAID, it's a reasonable balance. You're asking questions. I don't think you're going to be investing large amounts of money. You're going to look at existing research, what science evidence is there,
Okay.
and making your best judgment. And then again, I said, learning as we go along. We don't have all the answers.
So looking at existing resources to be able to make that decision. Sorry.
Very quickly, just looking from the investor's perspective, you want to build a hydropower dam based on some certainty of hydropower resource availability over the next 30 years.
Oh no, give it up. If you wanted to build a dam, then you could. You can't answer these questions. I mean, you're building a piece of infrastructure that's going to be in the river for 200 to 500 years, right?
So it's not over top.
We don't understand the hydrologic environment beyond 30. Is that fair? I mean, there's a real challenge between those two issues to begin with. And we talked about this at lunch. If you could build a dam and take it out in 50 years, that would be the ideal situation. Because they might not be appropriate at that point, and we might not need them at that point. But they still represent one of the most important ways of meeting some of these basic needs now. This is a real challenge.
You don't want to create a potential disaster that's greater than the original flood itself.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I was just speaking, if you were another country looking to invest in building infrastructure in, let's say, Laos, and you were looking to profit over a 25-year concession.
That's right.
Right? Well, you're going based on historical data. You're not required to do a climate change analysis. Are you making the best investment decision? You can generate less
Absolutely.
in times of drought, but you can never generate more than your max capacity in times of flood.
Right.
So you're either spilling your money or you're not getting the money that you had anticipated.
Well,
So-
this gets back to some of the questions I think Jean was asking, and we have a great deal of concerns about how these things are being financed, and the way that third-party funding is now playing a much larger role in the development of large infrastructure than the traditional financial institutions, where we've worked very hard to build safeguards in to look at some of those kinds of issues. And in some of this where you're right, it's a 25, 30-year concession, and what happens in years 50 might not be as important to them, and they might not want to make investments up front to address those 50 or 100-year concessions. There's a large capacity building element in that. I think one of the areas that we've worked a lot with Laos and some of these other countries is to build their capacity to be able to look at these types of arrangements. And understand what types of things they should be requiring in these kinds of deals. And that's going to be more important, is the buyer's going to have to be, we're going to have to make the buyer more capable of being aware. Sorry, it's buyer beware, but we want to build their capacity so that they can enter into arrangements to protect their own interests. Because they want something that's going to be delivering in year 50. They want something that's not going to compromise their other development opportunities. And they want something that's not going to create a bigger problem than they've got. We need to work with those countries to build their capacity to make those decisions and enter into those agreements, because that's going to be the wave of the future. It's a real tough world out there.
Let me clarify. There are two aspects of dam design. One is you want to maximize your output and you maximize your benefits. But you also want to make sure that the design is safe, that the dam doesn't collapse, that it passes the maximum probable flood. And it's the maximum probable flood that I can't figure out from these GCMs. Okay? I could do everything else. We could do all the other stuff, but this is the part that's really important that people tend to overlook.
Sorry, I'm looking because Henry, you had your hand up, so I'll go back to you, but I want to make sure nobody else. Sorry. And then, Rich, how much time did you want to close up?
Well, we're supposed to stop at 4, but we don't have to. We can run out of questions if we do. Otherwise, 4 is our cutoff. Thanks. I'm not discouraging discussion. I'm just saying we'll cut off at 4, but if there are no questions, there's no questions.
Thank you again. So the Mekong River or the Mekong River Basin Development Plan and subsequent versions of it in the future are based on a good understanding of the negative and positive impacts of development in conjunction of climate change. So I think the answer is yes. The investment in climate change in general is well worth it. In fact, I think MRC has just completed, or is still undergoing, a climate change study in which they have actually identified. They've run a lot of climate change scenarios, modeling scenarios, hundred of the GCM models, and a number of downscaling techniques. And they've actually come up with 9 climate change scenarios that basically, paint, the probable extent of the change in climate in the future. So I think in the Mekong River Basin, understanding the impacts is based on running these scenarios, okay? And I think the scenarios have to be plausible scenarios. So I'm going back to the hydropower dams. In the council study, which is still undergoing, we consider scenarios that are plausible. What this means is that hydropower dams are going to be there. Because I think the discussion has to really focus on minimizing the negative impacts, maximizing the positive impacts of the developments, taking advantage of the opportunities that the climate change presents, and taking account some of the risk. I will cite two examples, for example. The hydropower dams in Laos, for example, and in China, and I think they are kind of designed to maximize power. But obviously through negotiations, consultations, discussions among the 4 member countries, as well as the dialogue partners, there might be a room for more joint operation, perhaps for the benefit of flood control or dry season irrigation or counteracting the salinity impact of sea level rise. Maybe the joint operation, the multi-objective operation of those cascades will supersede the operation for maximum power. So I'm hopeful that that's going to happen, and I think that's going to happen. The real conflict, I think, in the Mekong Basin is hydropower versus fish. The rest of the impacts are, I think, can be mitigated to some extent. But fish and dams, they don't mix, okay? I think 1/3 of the fish species in the Mekong River Basin are those called long-distance migrators. They migrate all the way to China. And those are going to be impacted because of the barrier effect of the dams, both upstream and downstream, okay? And the solution has to actually look at who is really impacted of those. And that's basically the 60% poor people in the basin. The basin, I think, is about 60 million that are relying on subsistence fishing. And so solutions has to, obviously, I don't have to say this, has to involve moving these people from subsistence farming to something else. And that might involve other sectors as well, not necessarily water, not necessarily energy, but other sectors as well. I mean, if I'm a subsistent fisherman, I probably hate myself for fishing every day. I would rather be working in an office, for example, that's just me, and be able to provide better to my family. If we can provide an option to the fishermen, maybe through the host countries, maybe through the other countries as well, maybe through the development partners, I think that will be a big step towards actually coming up with a political and management solution to this fish versus dam conflict.
Yeah, I think we'd all rather be out fishing.
Yes.
And in addition to that, we can always eat our fish here in the U.S. from the aquaculture fence in Cambodia and Vietnam. Anyway.
Thank you, Henry. That's a very good way to, I think, bring this back to a more philosophical aspect as well. We at Stimson we agree with most experts, environmental, scientific experts, et cetera, that mainstream dams of 68, 70 meters high are not a really good thing in terms of so many people still dependent on fish for their livelihoods and survival. But at the same time, we try to be practical about this so that Laos has definite interest in this, but there's also the issue of, well, should Laos profit at the expense of downstream countries? And so there have been a strategic environmental study done for the Mekong River Commission, that showed, and also you mentioned the Portland State University study, which was supported by USAID, showed there's a huge disparity between new benefits and who loses, and so the benefits that Laos gets are actually much smaller than the negative impact downstream on other countries. So that's not to say that we're not saying Laos shouldn't build a dam. We're just saying it takes you back to this: what are the trade-offs and how many dams, which ones, what type, sort of thing, approach to the issue. But finally, and my colleague Courtney Weatherby, by the way, who was responsible for mainly putting this program together, but and our other colleague Brian Eiler, who's on holiday right now. Anyway, we come to the conclusion that it's not going to be persuasion, that is, save the fish or save the environment. It's really, the drivers are about money, and it's about economic development and the profits that come from it. And we don't believe in perpetual poverty either as an answer to these things. But the main point I would make is simply that it's mainly the money that's going to be the driver. And the problem, the reality, the narrative we're developing for the future of these mainstream dams is that the political and financial risks are rising. And these are all concessions. These are all either private companies or state-owned companies, state-owned banks, etc. They're investing in these projects. And China may do some investment for other than economic purposes. But still, even their companies, they want to make money. They don't want to lose money in this project. And there's a real question now whether these are money-making projects over the longer term. And so that's sort of what we were looking at is what are the costs and benefits. And you could say a similar thing, for instance, about the climate change here and the political debate, argument about it. At the end of the day, it's not going to be the politicians. It's going to be the insurance companies who are going to decide how we respond to rising sea level, for instance. So this has been a wonderful discussion, I think, and particularly to get all these different perspectives on this issue. And it is an extremely complex issue. And we, again, at Simpson, we don't say we have all the answers at all, but we do think that this issue of trying to better evaluate the trade-offs is very important, but also, and sharing the water and the energy is very important, but also looking at where the money's coming from is not coming from Laos or Cambodia or even Vietnam. It's coming from developers and banks that finance them. And for various reasons, these projects don't look so great now as they did when the first MOUs were signed. And so that also means it's incumbent on the donor community in particular to try to help countries like Laos or Cambodia or Vietnam find other ways to get where they want to go in terms of economic growth and development. So I want to thank everyone very, very much. And again, it's particularly a pleasure and honor to have CEO Font here from the Mekong River Commission, because it is really a big deal that the first time now the CEO is from the region. And it was once thought that would be very hard to do because who would decide who's going to get it? And somehow you've emerged out of the private sector, which is an interesting way to path that maybe hadn't been thought so much about in the past. And we also think, you know, the Mekong River Commission has a lot of flaws, a lot of problems, but it's the only game in town. There will never be another treaty like the 1995 Mekong Treaty. So if we let that fall into disuse or disrepair or ineffectiveness, that's then who knows what's going to happen in a region of, you know, with decades of warfare and struggle and political problems and still political hard feelings among different countries. So I want to thank you again, everyone, and you, your audience. It's great to get an audience where we have both the domestic U.S. and the international and the environmental perspectives represented. And again, thank you, Courtney, for your work in pulling this together, and for all of the and for all of you on the panel and people who support your work for being so forthcoming and joining our program. Thank you very much.